To break up with me. Caleb faked amnesia. He asked, "Who are you?" I froze for a second, then smiled. "I'm your sister-in-law." Caleb was stunned. That night, his older brother, the very one who had been constantly urging us to break up, frantically texted me, "What the hell? When did you and I ever get together?" Caleb is waiting outside my house with a knife right now. When I got to the hospital, Caleb was lying in bed. His head was wrapped in bandages, looking very convincing. He looked at me with confusion and bewilderment, asking, "Who are you?" I froze for a second, then smiled. I reached up and pulled my collar down slightly, revealing a red mark on my neck. "I'm your sister-in-law." The door to the hospital room was closed. His brother was waiting outside, waiting for me to break up with Caleb. When I received the news that Caleb had been hospitalized after a car accident, I was actually with his brother. Arthur looked at me with a half smile, waving a $5 million check in his hand. "Miss Sterling, no one can predict the future between you and Caleb, but your own future can take off." From this moment on, Caleb and I had been dating for 2 years. He had always kept his family background a secret until recently, when I was working a part-time job and bumped into him. He was out having fun with friends, staying in a presidential suite that cost $50,000 a night. When he was checking out, I just stood quietly at the front desk looking at him. I wasn't suffering, nor was I tired. Caleb and I locked eyes. He looked embarrassed. "I was afraid to tell you before, because I thought you'd feel too much pressure being with me." "Me?" I pointed at myself in disbelief. "Me? Do I look like someone with that much pride? If you had told me you were rich from the start, you wouldn't have had to chase me." For over a year, not many people knew Caleb and I were dating. After his friends saw us that day, word somehow reached the Davis family. And that's how I met the head of the Davis family, Caleb's older brother, Arthur Davis. The two brothers looked about 70% alike. When Arthur looked down at me, his oppressive and heavy aura made me shudder. He told me to break up with Caleb last night. He sent me a video. In the video, he and Caleb were sitting across from each other. Compared to the still boyish Caleb, his older brother was clearly more mature and composed. When Arthur spoke, his voice was unhurried, every word striking right at the heart. "I heard you and Emma met in college. You chased her for a long time, and she always had a terrible temper. But the moment she found out who you really are, she suddenly became completely obedient." His implication was obvious. Gold digger, hypocrite, compromising herself for money. Caleb quickly retorted, "She's not like that." His tone was hasty, lacking confidence. He was just eager to defend me. But deep down, even Caleb didn't fully believe his own words. Compared to an old fox like Arthur, Caleb was out of his depth. Seeing Caleb take the bait, Arthur couldn't help but smirk. "Is that so? Then why don't we put on a little show? You fake amnesia after this car accident and ignore her. Let's see how she reacts." The video ended there. What was happening now left no doubt Caleb had agreed to play along. The expression on Caleb's face changed rapidly, like his brain was buffering from an overload of information. "Want an apple? Your sister-in-law will peel one for you." $5 million was definitely tempting, but the fact that you two brothers were playing me for a fool really pissed me off. Hearing me call myself sister-in-law made Caleb's face turn green with anger. He opened his mouth, clearly wanting to interrogate me, but stopped himself at the last second. He still had to maintain his amnesia persona. If he broke character now, he'd only be shooting himself in the foot. I feigned composure, but tears welled up uncontrollably in his eyes, and his voice was choked with emotion. I think my brother is single." I smiled and waved my hand dismissively. "You have amnesia. It's normal that you don't. Remember your brother having a girlfriend?" Caleb pressed his fingers hard against his temples, sounding anxious. "I think I'm starting to remember something." I pulled out his medical chart and shoved it in his face. "But doctor said there's no chance of you recovering your memory." Caleb gripped the medical chart tightly, the veins on the back of his hand bulging. I placed the peeled apple on his bedside table. Before leaving, I patted him on the head. Since you've forgotten, those memories obviously weren't that important to you. Anyway, look forward to the future. I'm going to go get a hotel room with your brother. I mean, go grab dinner with your brother. Get some rest. We'll come see you when we're done. I waved at him, smiling as I walked out of the hospital room. The moment I closed the door, a wail that sounded like a boiling kettle erupted from inside. Arthur had no idea what had transpired in the room. He turned to me, his eyes softening as if pleased that I knew my place. On the way here, Arthur had been trying to guide my thoughts. Since Caleb is willing to put on this act, it means he already doesn't trust you. Once there's a crack in a relationship, it can't be fixed. It only gets bigger. Trying to win him back is pointless. Rather than an ugly, hysterical breakup later, it's better to take the $5 million now and disappear gracefully. Arthur was very good at finding people's pain points. I handed him my debit card. I don't want to go to the bank with a check. Have someone wire the money to this card. Arthur nodded and handed both the check and the card to his assistant to handle. By the time I walked out of the hospital room, the assistant was still processing the transaction. I would receive a notification once the money was transferred. When Arthur handed my card back to me, he was completely unaware. Someone was plastered against the window of the door behind him. Caleb was glaring fixedly at the card in Arthur's hand. Through the glass, because of the angle, he couldn't see exactly what kind of card it was. And, because of what I had said in the room, he naturally assumed it was a hotel room key. Caleb's face was dark, the veins on his forehead throbbing. As I took the card, I provocatively ran my fingers over Arthur's hand. Thanks. Put the card in my purse. Turned and left. Arthur looked down at the spot I had touched his fingers, unconsciously curling inward. The moment I disappeared around the corner, Caleb leaped out of his hospital room. The critically injured, bedridden man was now pinning Arthur to the floor, beating him like a rabid dog. Arthur, you old bastard. Give me back my girlfriend. Arthur looked completely bewildered. The hospital descended into chaos. Arthur was knocked out cold by a punch. Caleb sat nearby, crying so hard he couldn't catch his breath. I crouched in the corner, enjoying the show for a good while before finally reluctantly leaving. I spent the whole afternoon shopping with my new $5 million, not heading home until it was dark. As soon as I stepped out of the elevator, I saw Arthur standing outside my door like a ghost. He was radiating resentment. His face was covered in bruises, completely devoid of his previous calm and collected demeanor. Arthur was furious. Emma, you go to Caleb right now and clear this up. I unlocked my door and asked innocently. Clear what up? Arthur furrowed his brows, looking at me with absolute disgust. You know exactly what I mean. Stop playing dumb. Caleb is accusing me of stealing his girlfriend. He said I made him fake amnesia, just so you could cleanly cut ties with him. Currently waiting outside my house with a knife like a madman. I hummed a little tune, ignoring his complaints completely. I laid out all the things I bought that afternoon on my bed. In an instant, the bed was covered in incredibly inappropriate lingerie. I held up the most revealing white lace nightgown against myself and showed it to Arthur. Do you think I'd look good in this? Arthur's face turned even uglier. He turned his head away, refusing to even look at me, speaking through gritted teeth. Only a blind idiot like Caleb could ever like you. I'd rather be single for the rest of my life than be with a vicious woman like you. The moment he finished speaking, there was a knock at the door. Emma, are you home? Hearing Caleb's voice, Arthur froze in panic. He stared at the door as if facing a mortal enemy. Seeing me reach for the handle, he rushed to stop me. Don't open it. Caleb already suspected an affair between us. He saw Arthur in my apartment in the middle of the night. Arthur wouldn't be able to explain it even if he had 10 mouths. I rolled my eyes. He called my name, which means he knows I'm home. Wouldn't it be more suspicious if I didn't open it? I grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the closet. Why don't you hide in here for a bit? Arthur, he looked devastated. But thinking about it, there really seemed to be no other option. He took a deep breath and reluctantly squeezed into the closet. I turned around and opened the door for Caleb. Caleb's tall frame filled the doorway. His head was hanging low, the corners of his eyes still red. I reached out and touched his cheek, asking, "Why were you crying?" Caleb flinched, then grabbed my hand. His fingers were ice cold. "I heard you and my brother are together." His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "Is it true?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "What if it is?" Caleb's face crumbled. He dropped to his knees right there in the hallway, clinging to my waist like a drowning man. "Please don't. I'll do anything. I'll tell my family about us. I'll give you everything. I was wrong, Emma. I was so wrong. I should have trusted you. I should have told Arthur to go to hell." He buried his face in my stomach, sobbing so hard his whole body shook. The neighbors' doors opened. People poked their heads out to see what the commotion was about. I didn't care. I ran my fingers through his hair, watching the drama unfold. Inside the closet, Arthur was probably having a meltdown. The closet door was cracked open just a sliver. I could see his eye pressed to the gap, watching his brother humiliate himself. This was better than any soap opera. Caleb lifted his head, his face streaked with tears and snot. "Emma, I love you. I've always loved you. I was just scared. Arthur said you'd leave me once you found out about the money. He said you were only with me for what I could give you. I was an idiot. I was such a coward." He grabbed my hand and pressed it to his chest. "Feel this? My heart is breaking. I can't lose you. I really can't." I sighed. "Caleb, get up. You're making a scene." He scrambled to his feet, still holding onto my hand like a lifeline. "Then give me a chance. Just one chance. I'll prove it to you. I'll make it up to you for the rest of my life." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I glanced toward the closet. Arthur's eye was still there, wide with horror. I turned back to Caleb. "Fine. One chance. But first, you need to know something." Caleb nodded eagerly. "Anything." I pulled him into the apartment, then closed the door behind us. I led him to the closet. "Your brother is in there." Caleb froze. "What?" I opened the closet door. Arthur stumbled out, looking like he'd seen a ghost. His face was a mix of terror and embarrassment. Caleb stared at him, then at me, then back at Arthur. "What the hell is going on?" I crossed my arms. "Arthur came here tonight to force me to clear things up with you. He said you were outside my house with a knife." Caleb's face turned bright red. I wasn't going to hurt anyone. I just needed to talk to you." I was desperate. Arthur let out a long breath. "So you two aren't together?" Caleb and I looked at each other. "No, never," we said in unison. Arthur sank onto my bed, right on top of the pile of lingerie. He didn't even seem to notice. "Then why did you tell me you were going to a hotel with him?" Caleb asked me. I shrugged. "You and Arthur wanted to play a game. I just played along better." Caleb's jaw dropped. "You knew? You knew I was faking amnesia?" I nodded. "Arthur sent me the video. I saw the whole thing." Caleb turned to Arthur, his face darkening. "You sent her the video?" Arthur held up his hands. "It was part of the plan. I wanted to show her that you were committed to testing her." Caleb took a step toward him, his fists clenching. "You set me up. You set both of us up." Arthur stood up. "I was trying to protect you. She's not good for you, Caleb. Can't you see that? She just took $5 million from me." Caleb looked at me. "Is that true?" I pulled my phone out of my purse, opened my banking app, and showed him the balance. $5 million. Caleb's eyes widened. "You took the money?" I nodded. "He offered it to me. I figured if you two were going to treat me like a joke, I might as well get paid for it." Caleb stared at the screen, then at me. Then he started laughing. Not a happy laugh. A broken, incredulous laugh. "So that's it. You took the money. You played us both. And now what? You're going to disappear?" I looked at him calmly. "I haven't decided yet." Caleb's face hardened. "Fine. You want to leave? Go. But the money stays in the family. I'll sue you." I'll make your life hell. I'll. Arthur interrupted him. Caleb, stop. You're making a fool of yourself. Caleb rounded on him. You don't get to talk. You're the one who started all this. You're the one who made me fake amnesia. You're the one who offered her $5 million. This is all your fault. Arthur's face flushed. I was trying to help you. Help me? You ruined everything. I had a girlfriend who actually loved me, and you made me throw it away because you couldn't stand the thought of me being happy. The two brothers were now shouting at each other, forgetting I was even there. I watched them for a moment, then walked over to my nightstand. I opened the drawer and took out a small velvet box. I turned back to the fighting brothers. Hey! They stopped and looked at me. I held up the box. Caleb, do you remember this? Caleb stared at the box, his eyes widening. That's the ring I bought you for our anniversary. I nodded. I was going to say yes. I opened the box. The diamond sparkled in the light. But then you had your little accident. And your brother sent me that video. And I realized something. What? Caleb asked, his voice barely a whisper. I realized that if you really loved me, you never would have agreed to that test. You never would have let Arthur come between us. You would have trusted me. Caleb's face crumbled. Emma, I held up a hand. Save it. I closed the box and put it back in the drawer. I turned to Arthur. And you? Arthur looked at me warily. You thought you could buy me off. You thought you could control your brother's life. You thought you were so smart. But you're not. You're just a lonely, bitter man who can't stand seeing anyone else happy. Arthur's face went pale. I took a deep breath. So here's what's going to happen. I'm keeping the $5 million. Consider it compensation for emotional distress. Caleb, you and I are done. I don't want to see you again. Arthur, stay away from me. If either of you comes near me again, I'll make sure the whole world knows what you did. I'll tell everyone about the fake amnesia. I'll tell everyone about the $5 million. I'll tell everyone how the Davis brothers like to play games with people's hearts. Caleb's face went white. You wouldn't. Try me. I walked to the door and opened it. Get out. Both of you. Now. Caleb looked at me one last time. His eyes filled with tears. Emma, please. I pointed to the door. He hung his head and walked out. Arthur followed. His shoulders slumped in defeat. I closed the door behind them and leaned against it, letting out a long breath. My phone buzzed. A deposit notification. $5 million had just been transferred to my account. I smiled. Good. I walked over to my bed and started gathering up the lingerie. I didn't need any of this. I didn't need the money. I didn't need the Davis family. I had something better. I had my dignity. I had my self-respect. And I had a fresh start. I threw the lingerie into the trash, then walked to the window. Below, I could see Caleb and Arthur standing by their car. They were arguing again. I watched them for a moment, then closed the curtains. Goodbye, Caleb. Goodbye, Arthur. I picked up my phone and booked a one-way ticket. Somewhere far away. Somewhere new. Somewhere where no one knew my name. I had $5 million. I had my freedom. And for the first time in 2 years, I had myself back. The next morning, I woke up to another text. From Caleb this time. I'm sorry. I'll never forgive myself. I hope you find someone who deserves you. I deleted the text without replying. Then I blocked his number. I blocked Arthur's number. I deleted every photo of Caleb. I threw away everything he'd ever given me. By the time I left for the airport, my apartment was empty. Just me and my suitcase. And $5 million in the bank. As the plane took off, I looked out the window at the city below. Somewhere down there, Caleb was probably still crying. Arthur was probably still scheming. But none of that mattered anymore. I was free. And I was never looking back. 6 months later, I was sitting in a cafe in Paris, reading a magazine. There was a small article on page 12. Davis family scandal. Brothers at war over mystery woman. I skimmed it. Apparently, Caleb had cut ties with Arthur. He'd moved out of the family estate. He was suing his brother for emotional distress. Arthur had been removed from his position as head of the family company. The board had lost confidence in him after the scandal leaked. I smiled. Served them right. I took a sip of my coffee and turned the page. The waiter came over to refill my cup. Mademoiselle? You look happy today. I smiled up at him. I am. He smiled back. That's good. Everyone deserves to be happy. I watched him walk away, then looked out the window at the Paris street. People were walking by, living their lives. None of them knew my story. None of them knew about Caleb and Arthur. None of them knew about the $5 million. To them, I was just a woman in a cafe. And that was exactly what I wanted to be. I picked up my pen and started writing in my journal. Dear future me, if you're reading this, remember where you came from. Remember what you survived. Remember that you're stronger than you think. And remember that sometimes the best thing that can happen is having everything fall apart so you can build something better. I closed the journal and took another sip of coffee. Outside, the sun was shining, and for the first time in a long time, so was I. The end.